My guess is you've been sitting around surfing the internet a little bit more than usual lately. Well, did you know as the coronavirus drags on, hackers are working harder than ever to steal your personal information? Are your browsing history and identity protected? I've been a NordVPN customer long before they sponsored this show. Their software allows me to safely browse the internet without being traced. NordVPN's encryption hides your location and encrypts all the data, whether you send it or receive it. And here's an easy way to protect yourself risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to nordvpn.com/Sonnen or use the coupon Sonnen to get a 2-year plan plus a bonus gift with a huge discount. That's nordvpn.com/Sonnen or click on the link in the description to get this special deal. I have to operate in a world of ridiculousness, right? I mean, in large part, that's what MMA is all the way along the journey. All the way as I go back as a fan and a participant, and I was embarrassed to tell people what I did because the stigma and the belief around it, right? The human cockfighting, you remember some of these things. There was even a while where if I said the UFC, they didn't know what that was, and I would take the time to explain. I can remember specifically getting my hair cut. I can remember specifically trying to tell them what it was, trying to tell them what it stood for. And eventually they said, oh, so that's like boxing. And I said, yes. And after doing this dance 3 or 4 times, because I remember thinking it was cool. I mean, when I told somebody I'm in the UFC, I was bragging. I'm attempting to tell a story. I've worked hard. I'm a good athlete. I'm a tough guy. Like I was trying to tell a story. The story just kept failing. So I got to where I would always, and people would always come to the conclusion after I did go through a 3-minute introduction with them. They would always come to the same conclusion. They would say either, oh, so it's like boxing, or they would say, oh, so it's like wrestling. So over time, I either found something else to say that I did, or I would say it's like boxing, or I'd say it was like wrestling. But right, it's one of these interesting spots. People are now coming to me this week saying that Ciryl Gane, this is all happening too fast. If he could just have more time. And it always seems like a baffling argument, one of which I have never made in any walk of my life. Right? If you waited for the perfect time to have kids, there would be no kids, just by example. But if you waited for the perfect time to do anything, there would be no fill in the blank. So the argument now that's going around is this all happened too fast for Ciryl Gane. He needed a little bit more time. You're talking about a guy who's been in combat forever. You're talking about a guy whose kickboxing record looks a lot like Ciryl Adesanya's record. You're talking about a man in MMA whose MMA record looks a lot like Adesanya's record, except completely unblemished. I don't know what Gane is. I believe he's 13-0. If I'm wrong, he's 14-0. This guy hasn't been beaten, but you're saying that it's too early. You're then saying that a guy is being rushed into something when the odds makers in Vegas say he's a 3-1 favorite to win. I don't know how those go hand in hand. You don't think that Ciryl Gane should be at this point in his career fighting against Derrick Lewis. Derrick has a whole bunch of losses and Ciryl has absolutely no losses. Does that matter? I'm asking a question. I'm laying out what the facts are. And as soon as I start pushing back in some of these annoying conversations that I have to be in the very first place, I then hear no. Ciryl can go to Houston. Ciryl can do MMA. Ciryl can do main events. Ciryl can go in there with Derrick, who has a lot more fights under the unified rules. Ciryl should not be in a championship fight. What the hell's the difference? If you checked every box, what do you care if they put a belt up for grabs, right? I mean, this is one of the great problems in sports psychology. What difference does it make? What's on the line? I've shared this story with you guys. Put up with me and bear with it again. But one of my favorite sports psychology studies was done when a guy walked into a room full of people and he lays a 2x4 on the ground. And he says, who here can walk this 2x4 heel to toe? Everybody raises their hand and he has absolutely everybody do it. Nobody fell off. Everybody succeeded. There was no nerves. There was no anxiety. Whatever, they sit back down. He brings in 12-foot step ladders and he lays the same 2x4 across the top of the step ladders and he says, who can walk this heel to toe? And no hands go up. And the psychologist conducting this blind study says to them, the Event hasn't changed, but the environment did. You just walked that same 2x4. None of you fell off it. None of you were wobbly. None of you were sweating on your forehead. It's the exact same thing that you just did, but the environment is different. Now, I'm well aware that many of us would be in the side of, it's different. I don't have the same anxieties. I don't have the same nerves. And even if I didn't fall off it, that's different, because if I had fallen off it, nothing would happen, versus if I fall off it, that I would be hurt. I get where it's not the complete same. But I think you also understand my point that just because the environment changes, or even in this case, the stakes change, you see where this becomes problematic. And it's not just on Ciryl, it's on Ciryl this week. And people will continually say this about they need more experience. They're not ready. It's not their time. Those people could be right. But you will never know until it's over and you look back. You will never know where the peak was. You will never know where the prime was until it's all over and you look back. What you will do in life, looking for that perfect opportunity, is you're going to miss a whole bunch. Wayne Gretzky, it might be the greatest thing he ever did, but he left us with an adage, which is you miss every shot that you don't take. That's not just in hockey, that's in life. You will miss every single shot that you don't take. You have people saying that Ciryl, this is too fast, it's too early, while the odds makers that deal with people who put their money where their mouth is have him as a 3-1 favorite over a guy with much more experience in his hometown of Houston. Those arguments can't go together. And I'll share with you something about fighting because it's unique to this sport, unlike anything else I've seen. Anything else that I've ever seen, particularly as it comes to sport, but the more that you do it, the better that you get. The more you read, the faster you get at reading. More books you go through, better you get at comprehension. Better you get at spelling. Better you get at phonetics. Better you get it with logistics. I understand the entire linguistics. I understand the whole thing. This sport is unique that you don't get better each time you do it, you get worse. You will leave a piece of yourself out there each time. If you see somebody with 100 fights, that's not good. You should not compliment that person. That's weird. That's a very strange thing to do. And they usually don't have a whole lot left. And I see it in sport all the time. I come from amateur wrestling, but I've seen it in our sport. There was a guy named Brandon Eggum. He's now the head coach of the University of Minnesota. He was an alternate for the World Championships behind Chael Sonnen. Brandon Eggum did not prepare for the World Championships. He did not prepare to compete. He did not study the competition. He did not get his weight under control. He wasn't even going to be there because he was an alternate. Chael Sonnen at the 11th hour pulls out. Eggum gets on an airplane, enters, and makes it all the way to the finals. There's something to being fresh, and I could give you those examples until I'm blue in the face. We've even seen it in MMA. I'll give you a great example, that of Michael Bisping. Bisping was not prepared to fight for a world championship with Luke Rockhold. He gets called on short notice. He accepts. He steps in. He wasn't panicked. He was fresh. And even though Luke was prepared and Luke knew what he was going into and Luke knew that that date was looming and Luke was getting his cardio on and his weight on point, he was so focused. It was called paralysis by analysis. Bisping was loose. He was fresh. Not just his body, but his mind. He goes there and beats him. Those examples never run out. We saw it a week ago with the Olympic Games when Simone Biles pulls out and the alternate steps in just by example. But these will never run out of the person who's got a clear head stepping in and stealing the show. And I'm really just trying to share something with you. But experience in any other field that would lend an observer to believe you're going to have something closer to excellence. In this sport, it's just not true. You leave something of yourself out there. That chamber's only got so many, and once you fire them, you're done. And I've studied athletes my entire life. And I think I don't speak to you just as a coach. I think this is the parent in me, where I will lay in bed and philosophize and try to think about, okay, what is it that I've learned in this life? What is it I've learned in this journey that I can take from to then hand to my son? And I would tell you, all of the greats of my life, the guys I really looked up to, I'm talking about they were undefeated in high school, or they were undefeated in college, or they won world or Olympic titles very early. They all have one thing in common, which is they're all retired by the time they're 27. They just don't have anything left, and they want a whole bunch. They want a lifetime of awards. Might be the deal that you want to take, but either way, they were out. Whether it was mentally or physically, their body broken down, they only had so much to give. They gave it all in a condensed area. I mean, and I'm talking all of them, track and field stars, basketball stars, baseball stars, wrestlers, boxers, right? They were all done at 27 years old. They didn't have anything left. So when you look at Ciryl Gane, you've got the right to your opinion. Now, you're sharing your opinion opposite of the people that actually put money down to back their opinion because they're betting on Ciryl to win. I'm only sharing with you that to be the fresh guy or to have a lack of experience tends to be a very positive thing within sport. It's one of the problems that the commissions run to who are sanctioning some of these events is they want like records, but like records is very deceiving to like skills. And this whole belt system, by the way, do you guys know where it came from? You'll find this very interesting. You've heard of a black belt. You've heard of a white belt. And then you got all the belts in between. Everybody used to wear the gi to practice. Taekwondo, karate, jiu-jitsu, judo. Didn't matter what your discipline was. They all wore the gi to practice. And they were all white. And the gis were all white. Right, they're made from the same place and printed off and sold at the same store, and they're made out of cotton. Okay, great, they're white. Well, you could walk into gyms and you could see whoever had the darker belt. That belt got dark because of the grime and the dirt and the sweat of a gym, of the lifetime of the belt. No matter how many times you washed it, over time it stained a little bit. All of our clothes do that. We can relate to that. But you could walk into a martial arts gym, you could kind of look around, and whoever had the darker belt meant that he had done it more times. Meant that he got more grime and more dirt and more sweat on that belt than the people that had the cleaner, crisper white belt. And almost to a man, to a day, you could look at, and whoever had the darker belt meant he had more experience, meant that he was better, and it would be true. So eventually they came up with the black belt versus the white belt, which would be on your first day, and everything in between. So generally in life, I'm well aware that it's true. I'm just sharing with you, just reminding you. The fighters leave a piece of themselves in there. You don't get better by having a war. You have a wonderful night that you can cling to, that you can take with you. You get a pat on the back, and people hopefully will remember that. But it doesn't mean you're going to have a better one the next time or a better one the next time. In fighting, it does the opposite. It wears you down a little bit. So it can be a little bit deceptive. Keep that in mind as you enjoy the heavyweight match.